So hello everyone, welcome to the Extensions 101 webinar series. We are in the day 4 session of our 5-day series on building extensions for Zoho Finance Suite applications. So this series aims at introducing the components available in the Zoho Books developer platform for building extensions for Zoho Books and demonstrating on how we can use every component while building extensions with example use cases. I am Vinod and I am from the Zoho Marketplace team. Along with me, we also have Lavanya and Nandita from the Zoho Marketplace team as well, and Kishore from the Zoho Finance team. So at any point in time during this session, if you have any queries, please post them in the chat window and we'll address them. Let's get started now. Before we get into today's session, let's see a quick recap on our earlier sessions. So in our day 1 session, we introduced the 7 different Zoho products that comprises the Zoho Finance Suite. Then we introduced what extensions are and how they are useful. After that, we introduced the Sigma platform, which is exclusively meant for building extensions for any of the Zoho products. Finally, we introduced the Zoho Books developer platform and explained all the components available in the platform for building extensions for Zoho Books. And in our day 2 session, we covered one of the important component available in the Zoho Books developer platform, that is connections. So this component helps in creating a secured connection between Zoho Books and the services on the other end. We went ahead with creating an extension for Zoho Books and explained how to create connections while building extensions. Our third session was on widgets. So widgets are customizable UI elements which can be embedded as part of the Zoho Books application, providing an interactive interface to the users. We explained a use case wherein a widget would be required and explained the steps involved in creating a widget and embedding it to the extension. So the topics that we will be covering in today's session are as follows. First, we'll see global fields, which helps us in creating configurations which can be accessed from anywhere within the extension. We can create global fields in 2 different ways, one as fields and the other one as widgets. Next, we'll see install actions, which helps us in creating customizations to occur on installation or uninstallation of an extension. Finally, we'll show you a use case and build an extension to achieve that particular use case along with the global fields and install actions. Let's get into each topic one after the other. So the global fields are variables that store static information which can be used anywhere across the extension. See, the global fields are custom fields that users can create and apply within multiple modules in Zoho Books. These fields provide a flexibility in capturing additional information based on your business needs, apart from the default fields provided by Zoho Books. So let's see a couple of scenarios where the global fields can be helpful. In this case, we have created an extension between Zoho Books and handwritten application, which helps in sending personalized greeting cards to users. Since the handwritten application follows API key authentication method, and to authorize the connection between Zoho Books and the handwritten application, users need to provide API keys obtained from their handwritten account. So we have created a global field to get the API keys from the users, which can then further be used across the extension wherever required. We'll see another scenario. So in this case, we have created an extension between Zoho Books and Quotient, which sends quotations to customers. So whenever there is a change happening in any quotation that is sent through Quotient, the change event has to be captured, and the information on the changes happened in that particular quotation has to be passed on to Zoho Books. So this case can be achieved with the help of webhooks. The webhook is a web callback triggered by a specific event to provide real-time data updates between the applications. So we need to construct a webhook URL and subscribe to events in Quotient. So once the user created the webhook URL, we have created a global field over here to provide the webhook URL required for the configuration. So in both these scenarios, the extension requires only one field to be provided by the user. So we have used the fields option in global fields. If in case the extension requires multiple fields to be provided by the user as part of the configuration, in that case, we shall go with the widgets option provided under global fields. The details about the configurations to handle data within these global fields are provided in the Zoho Books developer documentation. So let's get into the documentation and see how the information is available over there. So I'm getting into the documentation, and once we access the global fields, we could see over here we have been provided with an introduction for global fields, along with the steps to create global fields, and in the same way we have been provided with the steps to create a widget as part of the global fields. And if we go further, we could see that we have been provided with some sample scripts in this particular documentation to fetch and update values within the global fields. So if in case you are creating a global field using widget SDK methods, in that case, you can use the first sample script provided over here to fetch the values provided by the users. So here is the get method. So this is used to fetch the values provided by the users while installing the extension. And in the same way, if you want to, update any value from your end, then you can go with the sample script available over here to update the values from your end itself while using the widget SDK's methods. And in the same way, if you are creating your global fields using the delete script, again, we have been provided with two different sample scripts. One is to fetch the values that is provided by the users, and the other one is to update the fields by yourself. So by referring these, example, syntaxes provided over here, you can configure your global widgets. Now, let's go back to our presentation and proceed with our next topic, which is install actions. So the install actions provides us options to create customized scripts which will run immediately after installing an extension or uninstalling an extension. Say you have published an extension, and whenever a user installs your extension, you want to send a welcome email to that particular user. So that particular action can be configured with the help of install actions. In the same way, if your extension requires any fields to be created by default on installing your extension, those customizations can be configured with the help of install actions. So the other way as well, that is, if we want to remove those fields while uninstalling the extension, the same can be achieved with the help of install actions. So under install actions, we have two different options. One is on installation and the other one is on uninstallation. First, we'll see on installation. So this on installation feature allows us to create a script which allows the extension to run a basic function whenever the user installs the extension for the first time or updates any existing extension. So this on installation script can be executed only once in an extension, and we can have only one on installation script for for an extension. In the same way, the uninstallation script also provides us the option to create script which allows the extension to run a basic function on uninstalling the extension. So just like the on install function, this on install script also can be only one on install script can be created for an extension, and it can be triggered only once for an extension. So with this, we have seen an overview on the global fields and install actions. Now, let's get into the Zoho Books developer platform and see how we can configure these global fields and install actions within the platform. So in order to get into Zoho Books platform, we need to create an extension first. And to create an extension, we need to get into the Sigma platform. So I'm getting into my Sigma platform, and to create a new extension, I'm clicking on the new extension button. So here we need to provide a name and the description for our extension. Just provide a name now and a description for the extension. Once we provide the name and description, we shall choose the service as Zoho Books. And once we read and agree to the terms and conditions and click on create, you can see the extension is getting created now. So the extension has been created, and when we access the extension, we could see we have been taken into the Zoho Books developer portal to add all the customizations required for our extension. As we seen in our earlier sessions, once we get into the developer portal, we'll first be taken into the learn section, and whatever the customizations that we need to add as part of our extension can be added under the build section. Once we build our extension, to add any configurations to get values from the user who is installing the extension can be configured under the configure section. So under configure, we could see two different components. One is global fields and the next one is install actions. As I mentioned earlier, under global fields, we have two different options. One is to create a global field and the other one is to create a settings widget as part of the global fields. Now, let's go ahead and create a global field first. For that, I'm clicking on the new field button. And here it is asking us to provide a name for the button. Then a description for the field that we are creating. Then we have been provided with a multiple data types for the field that we will be creating and the drop down. Based on our requirements, we shall pick one choice and proceed further. And in the default value, if you want to provide any default value for your field that you are creating, it can be provided over here. Then we can define the visibility for the field that we will be creating. After that, we can choose if we want to make this field as mandatory. And once we provide an option and click on save, we can see that the global field that we have just created has been successfully created. After creating a field, if we get into that particular field, we could see that and new field called placeholder has been automatically generated. So while creating your extension and adding your customizations, wherever you want to refer this particular field, it can be referred with the help of this placeholder. Okay. Now let's see how we can create a widget as part of the global fields. For that, I'm clicking on the upload widget button. And again, we need to provide a name for the widget and a description for the widget as well. Then we have an option to upload the zip file. In our day 3 session, we have covered how to create widgets as part of the extension. So in that, we have explained after we add all the configurations required for the widget, and it has to be bundled and created as a zip file, which has to be uploaded within the Zoho Books developer platform. So the same applies here. So we need to add all the configurations required, bundle it as a zip file, and that zip file has to be uploaded over here. Once we upload and click on save, our settings widget will be created. Now that we have seen the global fields, let's move on to the next section, which is install actions. So once we access the install actions, we could see there are two different options. One is on installation and the other one is on uninstallation. So if you want to include any customizable scripts that has to be triggered on installing the extension, that script can be created using this deluge editor. And in the same way, if you want to create any customizable scripts that has to be triggered on uninstalling the extension, that particular script can be created using the deluge editor provided under the on installation option. So once we create, these scripts can be associated with our extension so that it will be triggered automatically on installation or uninstallation of the extension. So with this, we have completed an overview on the global fields and installations, and have seen a gist on how we can configure these global fields and install actions in our extension. Now, let's get back to our presentation, and we'll see an use case wherein global fields would be required. Okay. So here is our use case for today. We are going to create an integration between Zoho Books and Trello, which is a project management software. So our requirement here is whenever we create a sales order in Zoho Books, that sales order has to be passed on to Trello, wherein we can track each and every stage of processing that particular order. So the Trello works in this way. We'll have a board for every project, and within the board, we will be having multiple lists, and in every list, we can have multiple cards. So let's go back to our presentation. So in our case, we are going to create a card in Trello for every sales order that is being created in Zoho Books. Okay. So once the sales order is created, the same information will be passed on to Trello as a card, and using that card, we can track the progress of that particular sales order in Trello. Okay. So before we start creating or implementing this extension, let's see what are all the steps involved in implementing this particular use case. Since the integration is going to be between Zoho Books and Trello, we first need a secured communication between the applications. So first we'll create a connections between Zoho Books and Trello. After that, uh, see, the Trello is being following the API key and API token authentication method. So we create global fields to obtain the API key and the API token of every user who is installed the extension. So the second step is to create global fields to get the API key and API token. Once we get the get the API keys and API tokens, we'll then have a custom function which will uh, you know uh, fetch the sales order information from Zoho Books and pass it on to Trello using the authentication, that is the API key and the API token provided by the user. Okay. So in order to trigger this function, whenever a sales order is created, we will create a workflow which will automatically trigger the custom function whenever a sales order is being created in Zoho Books. So these are all the four steps that we are going to implement in our extension today. First one is connections. Then we'll create global fields. After that, we'll create a custom function and associate it to a workflow. So let's go ahead and start implementing our use case by creating an extension. As I mentioned earlier, in order to create an extension, we need to get into the Sigma platform, and to create our extension, we need to create on the button new extension. Now we'll provide a name for the extension and a description for the extension. Then we'll choose the service as Zoho Books. And once we agree to the terms and conditions and click on create, we shall wait. Yes. So the extension has been created successfully now. And once we access the extension, we have been taken into the Zoho Books developer portal. So as we discussed, our first step of our implementation is creating a connection, right? So in order to create a connection, we need to get into the build section. So under the build section, we can find a component called connections. So this will help us, create connections between Zoho Books and the other services. And once I click on predefined connections, could see a list of services has been listed already. I'll just search for Trello here. So we could see that service Trello is already available as a default service. So I'll just enter into the service and start creating a connection by clicking on the button create connection. Now I provide a name for the connection, and the link name will be automatically generated. Then I'll choose all the scopes provided over here and click on create and connect. Now the connection is asking our permission to authenticate this connection. So once we click on connect, asking us to acknowledge again. Once we check the scopes that we have provided and click on allow, we could see the connection has been successfully created. So in the same way, we need to create another connection required for internal communication within Zoho Books. So I'll go for the default services again and search for books. So I'll start creating the connection for Zoho Books by clicking on the button create connection. I'll provide a name for the connection. And we need to choose the required scopes. So in that case, we are accessing data within the sales order modules of Zoho Books, right? So I'll choose sales orders all scope. And whenever we are using the global fields as part of our extension, we need to define scopes for those global fields as well. So let us get into the documentation and see what scopes are to be defined for global fields. So here the scopes for a global field are settings scope. So I'll just go for connection and search for settings, and I'm choosing the settings.all scope here. So with this, we have chosen all the required scopes. Now I'll click on create and connect. And once I click on connect again, it is asking for authorization again. So I'll click on connect again. Here we could see the two different scopes that I have provided, which is sales orders and settings, has been added. So I'll click accept, and the second connection has been created successfully. So with this, our required connections, one is to connect Zoho Books and Trello, and the other one is to have an internal communication within Zoho Books, has been successfully created. Let's just close this, and we'll move on to the next step of our implementation, which is creating global fields. So we know that to create global fields, we need to get into the configure section, and in the global fields, we'll choose the new fields option. So I'll click on the new field button, and I'll provide a name for the first field, a description for the field. Then I'll choose the data type as text box over here. I'm not going to provide any default value now, and I'm going with the visibility everyone. I'm making this field mandatory because every user has to provide an API key for authentication. So once I choose all the options, I'll click on save. So we can see that the field that we have just created has been successfully created. So while explaining the use case, I mentioned that user needs to provide API key and API token, right? So we need to create another field to get the API token as well. So let's create another field by clicking on the button new field and follow the same process, that is providing a name, API token, providing a description. Once again, I'm going with the data type text box, and I'm leaving the default value empty. And I'm going with the visibility everyone over here. Then I'm making this field mandatory as well. And once I click on save, so we could see both the global fields required for our implementation has been successfully created. So with this, we have completed the two steps of our implementation. One is creating the required connections, and the next is to create the required global fields. The third step is to create a custom function. So for that, we'll get into the build section. And in order to create a custom function, we need to access the automation section. So within automation, we'll get into workflow actions, and here we have an option to create custom functions. So let's get into that. So in order to create a new custom function, we'll click on the button new custom function, and once we get into the we have been asked to provide a function name. Then if required, we can provide a description, which is not mandatory over here. After that, we need to choose the module where this particular custom function is going to be executed. In our case, we are gonna execute this function in sales order modules of Zoho Books. So I'll choose sales order. And once we choose the module, we could see that a deluge editor has been automatically populated to add our logic for our customizations. First, if we are using any global fields in this particular custom function, we need to check this. Since we are using two different global fields, I'm checking this. And after that, you could see in the deluge editor, we have already been provided with certain informations like the sales order information, organization information, the user information, and the global fields information. So this is how the deluge editor makes the work of a developer easy by already fetching the necessary information required for the module selected. Okay, so let's go ahead with implementing our customization. I have already created the code for our implementation today. So in our implementation, we are handling multiple APIs to fetch the sales order information and passing the information to Trello and creating a card in Trello. So multiple APIs will be handled. So in our day 2 session, we mentioned for every API, there should be an organization ID and API endpoint associated as created over here. So since we have the organization information available already, we get into that, we can see the organization ID and the API root endpoint already fetched by the deluge editor. So I'm just fetching this information and make it available as variables over here. So this is the first step. Next, I mentioned that if we have any global fields created, those global fields has to be referred in our customization with the help of placeholders, right? So we have created two different global fields, and see, I'm passing the key over here. So I'm just replacing the placeholder with the field that we have just created. In the same way, I have used another the placeholder of another global field here. So I'll just replace that as well. Now I have successfully replaced my placeholders for the global fields. The same way, we have created connections, right? So I'll just replace the connections now. First thing is, I have used the request method to access the sales orders module information. Okay. From that API's response, I'll be getting the sales orders information, all the sales orders information. And from the response I got from the this particular API, I have picked only the required fields I will be passing on to the Trello as part of the card that will be creating. Okay. Then next, I have used another request method to get the information, board information available in Trello. Only if I have those information, I'll be knowing to where my data has to be passed. Okay. So for that, I have used another request method to get the board information. Once I have the sales orders information and the board information ready, I will be passing on the sales order information to the Trello, which has to be created as a card in Trello. Okay. For that, I have created another request method along with the necessary information that has to be passed on for creating a card. So this is how I have created my implementation. Let's just save this With this, the third step, that is creating a custom function, has been successfully implemented. Now, this custom function has to be associated to a workflow for automatically triggering the function whenever the event occurs. So, in order to create a workflow, we'll get into the workflow rules section, and let's go ahead and create a new workflow further. For creating a new workflow, by clicking on new workflow rule button, and we need to provide a name for the workflow. Then if required, we can provide a description. Then we need to choose the module where this particular workflow has to be executed. In our case, this workflow has to be executed in sales order module. So I'm choosing the sales order module over here, and once I click on next, it is asking us when this workflow rule has to be executed. It is event based or date based. We are going with the event based because the workflow has to be triggered on a particular event, that is creating a sales order. Then we need to define the action, that is sales order is created. Once we define the options and click on next, it is asking us to add any new criteria. I'm not, I'm not going to define any further criteria, because for every sales order that is being created, I have to create a card in Trello. So I'll go with no over here. And once I click on done, it is asking us the final thing, which is what action to be performed as part of this workflow rule. So if I click on immediate actions, and under the type, I can choose the custom functions, because I'm going to associate a custom function as part of this workflow. And we need to define which function has to be defined. So I'm choosing the function that we have just created. And once I click on associate, we can see that the function has been successfully associated with the workflow. And once I click on save, you can see the workflow has been successfully created. So with this, all the 4 steps of our implementation, that is creating connections, global fields, custom function, and workflow, has been successfully implemented. Now let's go ahead and publish this extension. So for that, we'll get into publish section. And once we click on publish, you could see all the components that we have added as part of this extension are listed. And once we provide some release notes and click on publish, we'll be provided with private installation URL. So once I click on this particular URL, we'll be allowed to install this particular extension. So while installing the extension, we need to choose an organization. And once we agree to the terms and conditions and click on next, it is asking us to authorize both the connections that we have created as part of our extension. So let's authorize one by one. Click on connect. Hello. The first connection has been authorized successfully. And in the same way, let's authorize the next connection by clicking on connect. Once we click on connect again, the scopes will be displayed. And once we click on accept, so both the connections has been authorized successfully. Now we'll move to the next step by clicking on next. So here, the global fields that we have defined are listed. So let's go ahead and provide the API token and API key for my Trello account. So once we provide the API key and API tokens and click on install extension, we could see the extension has been successfully installed. So once the extension is installed, our case is like whenever we create a sales order in Zoho Books, we need to have a card in any of the list available over here. In my code, I have defined to create a card for every sales order in orders received. So as of now, we don't have any sales orders, any cards in orders received. But once I create a sales order, we should be having a card created by the extension. So let's go and check that. For that, let me create a new sales order by clicking on the new button. Choose the customer, and I'll go with only with the mandatory fields. Then we need to add an item here over here. Then once I click on save as draft, you can see the sales order has been successfully created. So this sales order number is SO409. So let's check if we have a card created for this particular sales order. So as you can see over here, we have been new card created with the sales order number SO409. So with this, we can confirm that our extension is working fine. And in the same way, based on your business requirements, you can use global fields as part of your extension and create an extension for your Zoho Books product.